So, Abby, it's great to have you with us on the show today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here.
And I'm really excited to speak to you because you're all about copywriting and building a freelance career around kids, which was actually where I started out in my business 13 years ago. And it's something that I kind of feel I should know all about how to write copy and content and all of this by now, but I don't always. And I know that's always a bit of a struggle for people as well. So we're going to have a great conversation about how to build a freelance career, how to build a business around your kids, and how to do copy, all of that. But first, I'd love to know, how did you get started?
Yeah. Okay. I know you said we have about a half an hour. This may take about 15 hours to tell you how I got started, so we'll be good. So I, like so many of us, started freelancing because I had a baby and I didn't want to go back to work in an office. And I was looking for something that I could do that would allow me to stay at home and watch her eyelashes develop one by one as they do. and and so I decided I would be a freelance writer. And I really did not have a clue what that meant or how I would get paid or what that would look like. But I figured that I was fairly intelligent and I could probably figure it out along the way. And so at that time, we were living in Israel in the very beginning, and then we moved back to the States just after I started. And basically, what I did is I went to my local public library and I checked out every single book that I could find on freelance writing, on marketing, on copywriting, all of those books. And because this was 1999, and we did not have things like Google, we had Alta Vista. So shout out to my older moms here. So remember those days. And so I did the research in the library. I read a lot of books and I figured things out, and I started pitching articles to magazines about parenting and pregnancy because I was an absolute expert, having been pregnant once and having one child. And that paid like $25 an article. So that was awesome, but not really. And I started looking for things that would be a little bit more consistent in income and started getting into corporate copywriting. And really everything that I learned was from a book, from looking at how somebody else did it and then applying that. And then I had a whole bunch more kids. I have 5 children. So every year, I'd take some time and have a baby and be nursing and doing those things. And I managed to build up this business that was bringing in a consistent $4,000 a month. And that was nice. And that was what I wanted. I had no ambition to do anything larger than that. And I never really thought of myself as a business owner, certainly not an entrepreneur. I was a freelance writer and I was very comfortable in that role. My middle son was born with, he has a rare genetic, but not hereditary condition that's similar to Down syndrome, but not exactly the same. And so he had a lot of therapy when he was small. And freelancing meant that I could continue working and earning money, even with that very unpredictable schedule and sitting in waiting rooms a lot and that kind of thing. So that was really cool, having that option. And then in 2013, we moved to Israel, and my kids were all in full day programs. And I was thinking, okay, I could do something like I could take on larger projects. I could maybe make a little more money. I could work more consistent hours. That would be kind of cool. And then my middle son, the same one, was diagnosed with leukemia, like literally out of the blue. He came home from school with bruises one day. We didn't know what was happening. We went to the doctor, had blood work, and a couple hours later, we're in the ER and they're offering you tea. And that's never a good sign when they're offering you tea in the emergency room. Something's off. And yeah, he has leukemia. Closed everything down, called all my clients, shut down everything over the weekend, and sat in the hospital for a couple of years. And then fortunately, he got better. And I was at the time in a Facebook group for moms of kids with cancer. And I saw what was happening to these women. So in Israel, we have universal healthcare, as in much of Europe, but the United States does not. So there were women in there who were talking about not being able to keep the electric on, not being able to put food on the table because they couldn't work in a typical 9 to 5 with their kids with cancer. And so I started very informally helping some of these women figure out what freelancing looked like and what it might look like for them and for their families. And it was just me from my personal email, sending out an email once a week, like, hey, try this, do this. And I started getting replies back from women who were like, I did it and I got paid $400 and we bought groceries with that. And I was like, that's kind of cool. Like, that's kind of, and I was in this very dark place because even though Adi was better, there's a lot of trauma that your body holds on to when you go through that. So I was not like in a very whole place at that point. And helping these other women and doing something completely outside of myself was what really pulled me back to wanting to live again. And so that's how I came up with Successful Freelance Mom, and started teaching other women to get started in freelance writing. And along the way, I rediscovered my own passion for writing, for copywriting in general, and then specifically writing sales pages and email sequences and helping other people, specifically women, get their courses and services out in front of the people who need them most. So it's been this fantastic balance for the last 4 years. And it blows me away every day that something that I thought of in my head is now like a real business. And I have like a team and people send me things in the mail and they say, oh my gosh, I talked about you with my husband. I'm like, really? Okay. So that's how I did it.
I just love that story. And there's just so much about everything you talked about there. I mean, that's a complete, so many lessons within that. And I think one of the biggest things is, and I've literally just come from a conversation about what the feminine way, what it means for women to build a business. And we had we talked a lot about this idea of success. What does success look like for women? Is it different to men? And I believe it is different. When I worked in corporate, I set up a women's network, and I saw there that for men, it is about the promotion, the titles. That's kind of how they've been bred through business over the last couple of centuries. But for women, it's different. It's all about the ability to contribute. It's about the flexibility. It's about living their purpose and using their talents and skills in a way that helps others. And I can see that's 100% what you've done. And not only that, you're helping other women to do the same. Is there any advice or anything you think or that you help women with? Because as you said, for certain women, very often, if they have these challenges or they're a single mom, earning $400 a month just to be able to put food on the table is a big, big deal. And sometimes we have this tendency to compare ourselves to others and say, oh, well, she's earning 10,000 and I'm only earning 400. I'm a failure, when that 100% isn't the reality at
No,
all.
yeah,
What would you say to women who feel that way? Or is there any advice you give on people on how to define what that success looks like for them?
yeah. I mean, I think it is. It's really important to sit down and think about, well, what is that for you? What do you want? What makes you happy? I'm all about building a business that is fun for you. I think business should be a lot of fun. And I think the same way we are so generous with the way we treat our children. For example, when our kids learn to walk, they fall down a lot, and it would never occur to us to say to them, walking is clearly not going to be your thing. You should really just give up and not try. And yeah, we do a little bit of that comparison. Like if we have friends who have kids around the same age and their kid is walking first and ours is not yet, like we might feel a little bit inferior, but there's also a strong piece of us that knows it really doesn't make a difference. When they hit kindergarten, nobody says, oh, you started walking at 17 months. I don't know, like it's so irrelevant. And we are so hard on ourselves. If our path doesn't look exactly the way we think it's supposed to, we are so hard on ourselves. And I would just say, be gentle with yourself. Treat yourself with the same love and care that you give to your children on a daily basis.
I love that. And the more I'm in business, the more I work alongside other women, the more I realize that the key to success in anything is self-love.
Mhm.
Having that ability to be kindful to yourself, to set those
Yes.
boundaries that you need and respect your priorities first and yourself first, because then you've got so much more to give to everyone else as well. And you're coming from that place of love, and everything starts to feel right and it starts to work. So I love that that's what you focused on.
Thank you. Yeah.
And also this fun element as well, because if your business isn't fun, you may as well just get a job, I always
Yeah,
say.
exactly. I literally say that to people. Like, if you're going to be miserable, get a job. Why are you doing this? Like, lately I've been working very hard in my business, on my business. And my husband says to me like, "Oh, you're going to work more?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "All right. I mean, you look like you're having fun." I'm like, I am having fun. I love it. I love every second of it. I wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun. So,
Yeah. And actually that's the point when I started my career 13 years ago, I started out as a freelance corporate writer, and editor, and I moved into coaching and training from there. But it wasn't, I don't love copywriting. I have to put my
sure.
hand up and say, I love communication and I love creating meaning and connection. But that for me was different to copywriting. And I could
Absolutely.
copyright well because of that angle and background. But it after 8 years of doing it, it just wasn't what was filling me up anymore. And I was earning a lot of money. I had more clients than I could handle,
Mhm.
because I said I did it well, but it wasn't giving me that fulfillment. And I remember reading a quote
Right.
from Richard Branson, and he said, "If it's no longer fun, stop doing it." And it's like, this
Yeah.
isn't fun. But I don't think I really dared to admit that to myself for a long time, because I was like, well, what else would I do? And I love that you had an idea and you didn't necessarily have all the skills ready there for you to use on a plate or a ready-made network, which is what I had, which is kind of the trap I almost fell into. It was too easy.
Mhm.
But you went out and said, well, this is what I'm going to do. And you just decided, you got the skills, you figured it out, but you had that self-belief. And I absolutely love that you did that. You didn't wait for permission. You just jumped in and had a go. And I'm always saying, you've got to start somewhere and to
Yeah.
see where that takes you. And it's just taken you to this extraordinary place where you can have so much influence, positive influence on other people's lives, as well as supporting them in their business, which is just fantastic. Did
It's
you
amazing
ever
to do every
imagine
day.
that this is where you'd be?
No, in fact, what's really funny is if you go back a couple of years, I'm on record. I'm on podcasts from like 2017 saying things like, "Well, I don't want a six-figure business. That's too much responsibility." And now it's like, well, who was that? Like, what was that girl thinking, right? But I remember even just small things like hiring a VA and saying, well, I'm going to contract with you for X number of hours a month. To me, that was this huge responsibility, taking responsibility for part of someone else's income. And what happens if this all falls apart? Like, that was terrifying. And yeah, I mean, I definitely went through that feeling of it was not all clear to me from the beginning at all. Like, there are definitely still days. Again, 5 kids. I'm 45 years old, and I do things like, if I make a turkey sandwich, I put potato chips in it because I'm 8 years old in my head, right? Like, I am figuring everything in my life out along the way. I do not have any of the answers ready to go. I am just showing up each day. I'm doing the best I can, and some days I really screw it up, and some days I do it well enough to, to get my gold star and move on. So,
So one thing you said there about you don't always get it right, and it's obviously your path through your journey, your business has, particularly with 5 kids. I mean, that's enough. Let alone having two of those who needs hospital treatment.
right.
What got you through those challenging times?
Yeah. I mean, in a very real sense, like, it was just sheer force of will. Like, when you're in the middle of the challenging times, you work on adrenaline. You don't really like, nobody gives you a choice. Having a D with all of his special needs, regardless of the cancer, has always been like, people, oh, that's so brave. I could never do that. I'm like, nobody gave me a choice. Like, I did not choose this. This is what happened. And it's really just pushing through. I think that the aftermath, and I want to be very clear that I do not recommend having a child have a terrible illness or go through something like that in order to get to this place, but we're going to find the upside where we can take it. The aftermath is that nothing really is too scary for me to try anymore. It's hard to be scared of a Facebook Live after you sit in a room with a doctor who says you may have to prepare yourself for leaving the hospital without your kid. Like, nothing is that scary afterwards. So I feel like in a very real sense, I've lived through the worst possible thing and survived it. So yeah, if a client says no, if I have a launch that fails, if I screw something up and send an email to everybody that was supposed to go to 3 people, I'm going to survive that too.
Yeah, I love that attitude. And I think it's one of the biggest lessons we learn as an entrepreneur
Mm.
is that particularly when you're coming from a corporate environment, whereas if you screw up, it can mean the end of your career. And there is a lot of fear as an entrepreneur. Doesn't matter. The sky doesn't fall down. Tomorrow's another day. You just pick yourself up and just move on.
Yeah.
And failure is just information. It teaches you what you need to know next to grow, to
Yes.
get things right. It's really, we get far more information and help to move forward through our failures than we do from anything that goes right.
And in fact, one of the things that I teach my own students is if you're listening to anybody who says, like, if you're, you get a lot of coaches who put themselves out there as well, I've done this and it's always worked and I've never made a mistake. I'm like, guys, run in the other direction, because number one, they're lying. Number two, if they've never made a mistake for real, that means they don't know how to get out of a mistake and keep going. And I think that that's such an important skill. I almost love talking about my screw ups more than I love talking about my successes, because I think that that really demonstrates you're a real person. We all do make mistakes. And I mean, I am really good at messing up. But that means that I've figured out a lot of ways out of those mistakes and to get back on track. And I think that that's a really, it's what I look for in my own coaches. I think it's just, I can't imagine. Can you imagine like hanging out with somebody who made you live up to perfection all the time? That would be awful. That
Yeah.
would not be fun.
And perfection doesn't exist anyway. But I think, yeah, I mean, as you say, in my first business, I went head first towards a burnout. Thankfully, I didn't quite get there, and I managed to kind of pull things back and change what I was doing before it got to that stage. But that taught me that, I was coming from this corporate mentality where success equals having clients and making money. And I had a lot of clients, I made a lot of money, but that wasn't what success meant to me. And I had time with my kids. I had that as well, but I didn't have any time for me, which is where the burnout came out, and I wasn't doing work I loved. So now it's taught me that actually, and I've built my business coaching model all around this idea that you have to have clarity. You have to know who you are, what your vision is, where you're going, and you have to know what you mean for your clients and what they mean to you. That's it's a relationship. That's really, really important. And then that will naturally guide you to the right products, the right service, the right kind of business model for you. And that clarity is key. Then you have to have the balance. It can't all be about the business. It's all about showing up and developing your leadership skills and knowing what your business means to you, and getting that VA, taking that courage to take that step, or building out your support, even if that is just the mum next door that helps you out on a one afternoon. No one succeeds in business on their own. And learning how you can manage that, how you can manage your time, your energy, your productivity. And it has to be profitable as well. We can't just give ourselves away. So that's the third pillar, is the profitability, which is where your processes, your sales processes, your marketing, or your messaging, all of that comes into profitability. But you have to have those three things together. Yeah. And when I look at my old business, I had such a teeny percentage of it. It was nowhere near a fulfilling, robust business.
Right.
So I think part of my mistake in that was that I was treating myself like a freelancer, and I was just waiting for the clients to come. I was doing whatever came or landed in my lap. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And that's what got me in trouble. What is it about starting as a freelancer? Is there any advice you give people to build that out as their own business?
Yeah, definitely. What I teach is I think that you start off most likely, doing a couple of different things and seeing a little bit what does come in, what you can manage to do for clients and kind of find your feet. And that's fine for the first couple of months. But then once you've done a couple of projects and you've got that confidence and you're like, okay, I can have a conversation with a client, I can do the writing, I can deliver it, and I've got that down. Now it's time to go all in on a specific premium service that you want to be known for. So you don't just want to be a freelance writer. You want to be the person for, blog posts and lead magnets that tie into sequences, or you want to be the person for case studies that help coaches show the transformation they deliver. You want to be the person who has a very specific service that you're offering. And ideally, you want to be the person who has a very specific recurring service that you're offering so that you can get that, what we call recurring revenue, right? Money every single month that is predictable so that you don't have to fall into that feast or famine trap. There are so many things that people say about freelancing that I just don't believe to be true. And they don't have to be true. Like, you can do this in a totally different way that is with consistent income and that is fun. And that does not mean that you are at the whim and mercy of clients and their crazy deadlines. You can decide, for me, for example, I went from, doing all kinds of crazy things and deadlines and whatever. Now I do email sequences and sales pages for established course creators, and I only work on evergreen sequences. So they're not related to the launch of a product. Why? Because I have 5 kids and I'm 45 years old and I am tired, and I do not want phone calls at 10 o'clock at night saying, we got to change the email for tomorrow. I'm not doing that. So I do these very set evergreen sequences. There's no urgency in the creation of that sequence. I work on a schedule that I've built out. I'm able to charge a premium price because I have been doing only this for enough years that I'm really good at it, and I have people talking about me. And this is exactly what I teach to my own students. You go in, you create a premium service, you work really hard on exceeding customer expectations and just creating an amazing experience for the people you work with. And then you can pretty much charge whatever you want, and you start to get known for this thing, and life is amazing and awesome and beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you've challenged what freelance needs to mean. And as I say, I got it all backwards. I didn't do what you did at all. And I had loads of scope to do that as well.
Mhm.
But it's only now with hindsight, it's like, oh yeah, that's what it would have been good to do. But yeah, specializing, and you say in the early days, you're figuring things out. You say yes to everything. You have to figure out what works, what you like, what timing works for you, what you're really good at.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, have that courage to stick to that and be
Yeah.
known for that one thing and specialize and set your own schedule as well. That is so,
Yes.
so important. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that so many freelancers make. I worked with a lady recently who's a freelancer. She hadn't taken a holiday in 3 years, and she's got a young daughter, and she was working through the night, and was like, no, we have to develop your way of doing this,
Mhm.
because you're the
Mhm.
people. I think this is one thing that people don't realize is people don't know how to work with you. So you think the client knows how to work with you, and we're guided by them, but it's actually should be the other way around. They don't know how to work with a freelancer. You have to tell them, this is what we do, this is how we do it, this is when I need stuff, this is when I don't work, this is when I'm not available. And you can
Yes.
do that. You are completely allowed to tell the client what they can and can't do and
It's such an
maintain those
important
boundaries.
point. It's such an important point. And then it's not only making the boundaries, it's also maintaining the boundaries. Like, if you tell people, I don't answer email on the weekend, and then you consistently answer email on the weekend, it's not on them to remember that you don't answer email on the weekend. If you've communicated that and they send an email, I mean, people will send email when it's convenient for them. It doesn't mean that you have to answer it. And if you simply respond on Monday and say, thanks so much for your email, now that I'm back at my desk, here's my answer, they'll get it. But if you consistently choose to answer email on the weekend, they will continue to send it because you've given them no reason not to. So it's knowing those boundaries and really living those boundaries.
Yeah, I think your business and your clients are really like your kids. You have to
Yes,
you have to
absolutely.
teach them, now no, mommy isn't available right now.
Correct.
Mommy
Correct.
needs her space. And I think that's actually, that was one of the biggest pieces of advice I had as a new parent that totally works for my business. Is
Mhm.
I remember my midwife came in, and when my daughter was young, I just started a business. My husband was traveling 6 weeks. I was all on my own. And she was like, you have to remember, every time you go to do something, ask yourself, do I want to be doing this for the next 18 years? And
Oh,
if the answer
yes.
is no, then you have to put those processes in place from the beginning. And I
I
think we
love
forget
that.
that with our business. Oh yeah, we'll neaten things up and have our nice processes later. But no, you need
Mhm.
to bring them in from day one, and
Absolutely.
train yourself as much as everyone else.
Yes, definitely. I love that. Do you want to do this for the next 18 years? That's brilliant.
So,
Oh.
and well, on that theme, what advice, because you help women, specifically mothers, to build their freelance career, and
Mhm.
you've done that yourself around as 5 kids and not easy circumstances, as you said. What do you think it takes to be successful as a mumpreneur?
Mhm. I think that it comes down to a couple of things. You want to be really smart about what goes on your to-do list, in the sense of, you can put anything on your to-do list, but you've got, for me, I found I don't have a lot of uninterrupted blocks of time. Now that my kids are older, I have more. But when they were young, and for if you're juggling this with a full-time job or whatever's going on in your life, we've all got our stories, right? You can count on about 25 minutes at a time. So for me personally, every task that I need to get done, I stop and I think about it. Everything that's on my to-do list gets assigned 1, 2, or 3 25-minute blocks. And if something is on my to-do list that's going to take more than 3 25-minute blocks of time, it means that that's not really a task. It's more of a project, and I need to break it down a little bit more. So by focusing on that, it means that I'm never going to put something on my to-do list like, write website, because that's going to take a little bit more time. So I'm going to break that down into write copy for homepage, write whatever. Like, I'm going to break it down into the tasks that I can actually accomplish in 1 or more 25-minute blocks of time, because that's something that I know I can count on carving out at some point in my day, or my week. And so that's a big thing, is being willing to dig in and break your tasks down, so that when you put them on your to-do list, you don't want to cry. When you look at them, you don't feel overwhelmed. You know exactly what you should be working on. Again, if you put down like write website on your to-do list, you don't even know where to start with that. Like, that's so big and overwhelming and horrible. The other thing that I say to women who want to start a business is, you need to find 7 to 10 hours in your week where you are not the primary caregiver for small humans. Meaning, you have to, whether you have a partner or whether you have a sitter or whether you have hours that your child is consistently sleeping or whatever it is, you've got to be able to carve out 7 to 10 hours that are going to be the focus, where your business is going to be the focus. It does not have to be 7 to 10 hours at a single stretch. It could be an hour a day, every day of the week. It could be 4 hours each weekend morning, whatever it is, but you've got to be consistent. If you don't have 7 to 10 hours, I don't think that you can start a business. I think that that is the minimum. I don't think that you need 40 hours a week, but I think that you need to have that 7 to 10 hours a week where this is going to be your focus. And you have to figure out how you're going to get that. So if that's getting your partner on board, if that's making an arrangement with the mom next door, if that's paying a fifth grader to take your baby for a walk in the stroller for an hour after school every day, whatever it is, get creative and carve out that time if you really want to have a business.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, that's something that I found perhaps one of the most challenging things, is that your time is always so fragmented that
Mhm.
you don't have these big long stretches. You can't get into the flow, and particularly for a copywriter, that's quite difficult. But you have to find things around that. And I did something similar. I had my kind of 25-minute projects, and I had a list of 5-minute projects that I could do while sitting out in the car waiting for the kids to go out to school. So I could like check, check, check. So all these like mini things, like you just use time in a different way. And I love that you touched on tasks versus projects, because I see that all the time. They put on my to-do list, blog post. But yeah, you have to do the research, you have to write it, you have to edit it, you have to then put it online, do all the formatting, get the pictures, then promote it. These things are projects, not tasks. And it's so important to make that distinction, as you say. And when you put a project on, you procrastinate because, as you say, you don't know where to start with it. It's overwhelming. So having it broken down is much, much easier. And then you don't have to think, you just sit down, you just
sit down and do the
work
thing.
your way through it.
Exactly. I am all about making, make it easy for future Abby, right? Like at the end of the day, before I close up my office and go upstairs, my office is in the basement. So I make it easy for tomorrow, Abby, to come in and get started. So kind of reset the computer to neutral, like clear off the tabs, have a really clear list of what am I going to be focusing on when I sit down. If you take that, and it's literally like 30, 60 seconds, your future self will be so grateful.
I love that. I'm going to be borrowing that. Make it easy for future Abby or future
There you
Melissa.
go.
So one of my favorite sayings is, how could this be simpler? And then those moments where I'm just like, oh, this is too much. I'm just like, how could this be simpler? And sometimes I'll go for a walk while I think about it. And it's amazing how many times you think, oh, I just need to do this. You've been agonizing over something for so long. So coming onto your expertise as a copywriter and writing content for email sequences and landing pages, and I know this is something that drives people completely bananas. Where can people start with this? How do you begin to write a sequence of emails or a page that's really going to move people to take action?
Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, you want to always have a clear goal in mind before you sit down to write. What is the goal of this copy? What am I trying to get people to do? Where do I want them to end up? So start with that end in mind so that you know that every word that you write is designed to get closer to this specific end goal. Then you have to, my business is built on, core values of we don't lie, meaning ever. Like we don't say the thing is on sale for 2 days if it's always on sale. We don't say the webinar is live if the webinar is recorded. We don't lie, period. And we treat people well in that don't send or write an email that you wouldn't want to see in your inbox. If you wouldn't want to confront it on a sales page, don't write it in the first place, right? So if we keep these two principles in mind, like we're already in a great place, in a much better place than a lot of stuff that's out there. Building a business, a successful business, is at its core about helping people. And I think that in order to help people effectively, you have to be really willing to listen. So before I sit down to write anything, whether it's for my own content and copy or whether it's for a client, the first thing that I'm going to be doing is listening. So either listening to my own audience who's telling me exactly what they want and where they struggle, or if it's, for a client, I'm listening to the conversations they've had with their own clients. The first thing I'll do with a new client is say, put me in your Facebook group so I can listen to the conversations. I'm not going to post, I'm not going to say anything. I just want to see how they're talking about their problems, what questions they're asking. So if you listen and you really, really listen, and you don't just think about what am I going to say next, but you listen to what people are saying, they will tell you exactly what their struggles are and what they wish you would do to fix them. And if you can just deliver that, you will be so happy. They will be so happy. You will have a wildly successful business. So I think that the most important thing you can do if you want to write well is listen to what people actually need and want, and be ready to give it to them.
I love that. You make it sound so simple.
I think we make a lot of things harder than they have to be. There's definitely more to it than that, right? It's not like, boom, done. But we make a lot of things harder than they have to be.
Yeah, I think so. And I love that you focusing on telling the truth and what you want to hear. And what you said reminded me of a quote. One of my favorite quotes is by Les Brown, and he said, to be a great storyteller, you first have to be a great story listener.
Yes.
And I think that's exactly what you were saying there. Before you can write great copy, you have to listen to what people really want and what they respond to and what they connect with and what's meaningful for them, and then give that to them.
Yes.
As you say, it's then you have to do it, which isn't necessarily easy, but ask for help. If it's something you struggle with, don't just sit there and struggle. They can come to you, and there's a whole host of other amazing freelancers out there that can help and fill the gap with these things. So never struggle in silence. And it can be a real game changer when we start to ask for the help in those areas that when with not necessarily our strength. And I've been writing and marketing and doing copy for more than 25 years, and I'm always very happy to ask people for help with that, because perhaps because I know how hard it can be, and it's just not necessarily at my time in business where the best use of my time.
No, definitely. If it's not your expertise, it doesn't mean that you don't have talent or the ability to do it, but if it's not the best use of your time, if you can be making more money in your business doing something else with that time, then there's a lot of things that I know how to do in my business. At the moment, I'm trying to make my new email service provider do something the way I want it to do. And I've spent, right before we got on this call, I spent like a good 20 minutes on that. That was dumb. Like, I should have immediately, when I realized I didn't know how to do it, given that to somebody else on my team and said, somebody else figure this out, because it makes much more sense for me to be writing content for a client, because I get paid a lot more to do that than I get paid to mess around with my email software.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a big realization, isn't it? That, oh, I can do this, so therefore I should. And I think women kind of have this sense of duty. I should be doing this. I should be saving money. I should, and it just doesn't make sense sometimes. I had a similar thing over the weekend. I was doing some special bonus episodes for this podcast, and I decided, well, it's just a kind of a quick thing. It doesn't need to have the same format as my regular posts, so I'll do it myself. And then I realized I don't really have the tools to do that. It's going to take me a long time. And I thought, so I asked my VA, could you do this? And she's like, yeah. And she loved it. And she did it so quickly, so much faster than I could have done it. And it was just like, amazing.
And I think that we also overlook the fact that we can outsource, things on the domestic front. Unfortunately, we had to stop our cleaners for a couple of months during COVID. So that was really, and it's been a long time since I had to like clean a bathroom, so I was like, man, this sucks. And it was such a joyous occasion when we could, once we were vaccinated and once most of Israel has been vaccinated, and we could invite them back into our home. And I'm perfectly capable of cleaning a toilet, but one, I don't want to, and two, I don't have to anymore. So I'm perfectly capable of cooking dinner. I choose not to a lot of the time. I choose to order in because I would rather spend my time and attention hanging out with my kids, or doing work because I love my work, or chilling out with Netflix and my iPad on the couch. Like, why do the things when you're at the point where you don't have to? Just because you can doesn't mean that you should.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to be a real key lesson that everyone should take away. Like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think that was the first thing I outsourced, was the cleaning.
Right.
I used to just sit here and watch the fluff in the corners just gathering and feeling guilty about it. And it just took up all this mind space, feeling guilty. Or I don't have the talent to do that now because I have to work on this. But then I wasn't fully focused because this fluff was in the back of my mind. Fluff, for goodness sake. So anyway, getting a clean out was a godsend. And the one good thing about COVID was that it taught my kids to do a lot more around the house, like making their own lunch. And now very often I still sometimes have to work over lunchtime, and then the kids are like, "Oh, I've made you lunch." Like, oh, thank you.
That's awesome. I tell my kids that I had kids so that other people would have to fold the laundry and clean the kitchen, because I refuse to do them anymore. And I've outsourced all of that to my children, and they have specific tasks. All 5 of them have things that they have to do every single day, and they complain about it all day long, but I don't care because they've got to do this. I look at it as I'm creating responsible citizens for the world, and I don't have to do these things anymore. So.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, what influence do you think you running a business from home the way you have, do you think that's impacted your kids at all?
I do. I think that it's been very empowering for them to see. I don't know if they see it right now as empowering, but they're very aware of it. They're very aware that you don't have to follow a traditional path. They know full well that I dropped out of college twice. So like they throw that at us a lot. Well, I don't have to go to college. Mommy didn't. So Don't know if that worked out exactly the way I planned, but they're very aware that success can look different to different people, and that you get to decide who you're going to be and what you're going to be in this life. So I think that it's exciting to me. And they talk about it, and they have different levels of understanding depending on their ages and cognitive ability in our house, but you know, they like it. I think somewhere they're maybe even a little proud of me. I don't know if they would admit that in public, but because I've got ages 11 to 21, so but yeah, I think it definitely makes a difference to them.
Yeah, I agree. I see the same with my kids, that it gives them a very different outlook and mindset as to what's possible. And as you say, that there are success can look different. It doesn't have to be getting a job and being a good employee. It can be whatever you want. And I already see them starting to think about different ways they can not just earn money, but have an impact and change things. And I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exciting.
So, Abby, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. We've covered so much. Is there any last thing you would like to share with the women out there who are building a business?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to treating yourself with the same kindness and love that you treat your children, the same way you encourage them to pick themselves up after a fall, the same way you encourage them to try new things, even though they might be scary or even though they might fail the first time they try. Be a little bit gentle like that with yourself. Give yourself that same kind of nurturing environment to grow and develop in, and it's going to do amazing things for your business.
I love that. We couldn't have ended on a better note. Abby, thank you so much for everything you shared today. For anyone who is listening to this podcast while out with the kids, pushing the pram, working on their business, how can they find you? I'll put all your links in the show notes underneath. But if they're on the go, what's the best way to get
Sure.
in contact?
Check out successfulfreelancemom.com, and I'm on Instagram as @Abbi Perets. I have a Facebook group called Successful Freelance Writing Moms. You don't have to be a mom, but you do have to identify as a woman in order to join.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.